This is a Dreamcast disc and is for use only on a Dreamcast unit. Playing this disc on a hi-fi or other audio equipment can cause serious damage to its speakers.
Dreamcast, up to 6 billion players.
Welcome back to the stage of history.
Why don't we play together?
Hey, it's time to make some crazy money. Are you ready? Here we go!
Please stop this disc now.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be listening to this. This is episode 61 of the Dreamcast Junkyard DreamPod. My name is Tom, and I'm joined by two co-hosts. Today we have Mr. Mike Phelan. Hello, Mike.
Hello, Tom.
How are you, Mike?
Not too bad, Tom. Not too bad. Good to be back on the podcast.
Yes. Are you hyped for today's podcast?
I'm always hyped.
Yeah, I believe the term is hyped that the kids are using these days, or hype. Just hype.
Yeah, hype. It's it's gonna be amazing.
Excellent. Our other guest, our other presenter is Mr. James Harvey. Hi, James. This is your second appearance on the podcast, so your first one obviously went quite well. We've not sacked you yet, so yeah. How do you feel?
I'm good. How do you do, fellow kids? Is what they're all saying, I think, or something
is
like
it?
that.
Right.
No, I'm good, mate. I'm good. It's good to be back. As you said, I obviously didn't royally fuck up the first one, so that's always a plus.
Are you currently flossing as we record?
I am.
That's another thing the kids are doing these days.
I've left my webcam on, and if people want to see us do this from using video in the future to see that, I'm more than happy to oblige.
On the topic of flossing, I know we're deviating from the point here slightly, but I was at a wedding this last week, and one of the guys I was talking to at the wedding was stood outside the church, after the ceremony, before you go to the reception, and everyone's just kind of milling around, not knowing what to do. And we were just chatting, and we somehow ended up talking about Fortnite, and I asked him, have you seen this dance that all the kids are doing? This flossing thing, and he said yes. I said, can you do it? And he goes, I can actually, but only really slowly. So he kind of did it like just like one like kind of maneuver on each side, if that's what you want to call it, a maneuver. And this little lad who was sort of with somebody else, another family, kind of must have seen him do it out of the corner of his eye, and then subconsciously started flossing.
I feel like this is an opportunity to have a Dreamcast Junkyard flossing competition for all of our listeners.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll
talk
about that off the air, as it were. Anyway, back to the point in hand. This is DreamPod episode 61. I know that some people listen to this on their daily commute. Some people listen to it on a Monday morning going to work, and to those people, I commiserate and share your pain, because we're probably all going to work as well right now if you're listening to this on Monday morning. Anyway, it's Sunday afternoon, it's nice and sunny. We're going to talk about some Dreamcast games, some things we've picked up, some things we've played, and we've got quite a lot to get through on this actual episode, because we've not actually got together and chatted for, it must be about a month now. The last one we had was when we had Adam Koralik and Dreamcast Guy on the show. So yeah, it's been a few weeks, but we're back. And we'll get on with it now. So, as we always do, we generally start things off with a little bit of a chat about what we've picked up for the Dreamcast, what we've been playing on current-gen hardware, or any other retro systems. James, I'm going to come to you first. What have you been playing on the Dreamcast, or any other consoles that you may own?
Yeah, start with current gen first. Pretty quiet, actually, although I have been reviewing the new F1 game, F1 2018, which is phenomenal. So my review for that should be live next week. But I don't know if any of you guys are Formula One fans, but as somebody who avidly looks forward to this series every year, this one is just, they've done so many little things over the years, and it's just kind of culminated into this year's edition that's just blown the socks off the others that I played. I can't really articulate one individual thing. It's just such a complete package now. So I've really, really been enjoying that, and they've got a load of classic cars in it, which they've increased the roster of. So it's nice to control some of the older cars and listen to how racing cars should sound, rather than the awful cars we have nowadays. But yes, very, very impressed with that one. And if you are into your racing games, I strongly recommend picking that up. I think it's out on Friday. We come in now this week.
What are you playing it on? What format?
Xbox One X.
Yeah.
Oh, wow,
And,
nice.
runs very, very well.
I've been on the. I'm not sure if I can say yet, but I've been on the beta for F1 2018 as well.
There we go.
And it's pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive.
Have you got have you got One X as well, Mike? Or just the
I
one?
have, yeah. Recently,
Oh, you both have,
recently.
yeah.
So I also tried it just for comparison purposes on the S, and I was amazed at how well it runs on both. To be honest, obviously you've got that 4K HDR with the X, but you often find when you go to some of the street circuits, you get a little bit of slowdown. Not quite Monaco Grand Prix on the Dreamcast style slowdown, but it's just completely unnoticeable. So it's I think some of the early reviews are out, and it's been very, very well received. So yeah, I would definitely recommend picking that up. The only one thing that might be in my bonnet with Formula One games, and it really annoys me, is there's a brilliant career mode in these games, which encourages you to do kind of multiple careers moving around, multiple seasons moving around from team to team. But there's none of the other drivers ever move around. No. And I get that there's obviously probably licensing reasons for that. But it would be such a more complete package for me if you had like the different surprises from season to season with different drivers moving to different teams. And I think it would keep me playing for multiple seasons if that was the case.
Kind of like in FIFA or Pro Evo, you always get players moving between teams.
Yeah.
So season upon season, it all changes. Yeah.
One of the comparisons I made in my review was there's a very old F1 management game from back in 2000, F1 Manager from EA Sports, and that one actually did have the driver market moving around. So it was like your second season, you've got Michael Schumacher in a McLaren or something, and it's just, that would keep me playing just to see, what was going on and which drivers were going where. But anyway, I digress. So the other stuff I've been playing modern gen is it's football season, and when I say football, I mean proper football with the helmets and pads of the American variety.
You're not one of them.
I am indeed. So I've been spending a lot of time with the new Madden. Madden 19 is out. And the other little thing I picked up was No Man's Sky on the Xbox. So I owned this game when it came out on the PlayStation 4 probably a couple of years ago now. And it got a pretty rough time at launch with a load of features that it didn't have and everything else. And I played it for a few months. It was just kind of my change of pace game, if you like, just something to jump in and fly around and explore a bit. And then I didn't touch it, and I rebought it on Xbox just because it's been through so many updates, and it's a very different game now. So I'm just kind of working through that in co-op with a friend of mine, just on the weekend. So that's a pretty good experience as well.
It's an interesting one, No Man's Sky. I mean, I've never played it, but I do listen to a lot of gaming podcasts. I read a lot of games media websites, so I have kept abreast of the sort of the updates and the way this game is kind of evolved from what it was on launch on the PS4 to what it is now, and for all intents and purposes, it could be a completely different game as far as I'm aware. I'm led to believe. One game that kind of strikes me as similar in that way, but not quite as kind of dramatic, shall we say, is Drive Club. I remember when Drive Club launched, it got absolutely panned, but then it kind of over time evolved into what I think a lot of people consider to be one of the best racing games ever made.
It's happening more and more often nowadays with obviously games and more games as a service, whether it's explicitly stated that's the case or not. I mean, you look at things like For Honor as well. I'm not sure if you've played that. I mean,
haven't,
that was a game.
I know of it.
Yeah, it was another game that I personally thought was really enjoyable at launch, but it was, there were no dedicated servers, there was not much content, et cetera, and it kind of built up over time. And I think Rainbow Six Siege is another one that was actually quite panned when it came out. It didn't review well, there wasn't a lot of content, but that evolved over the course of like 18 months to become one of the most recognized esports titles and something that has gone through a complete kind of revamp. So I think it's a lot to do with marketing. I think with No Man's Sky at the time, it was, as we all know, the tales that went round about it, how amazing it was going to be and how, there were some point blank lies that were put out before the game launched. So I think a lot of it came down from the expectation of what the game was at launch. But yeah, it's not something I'd rave about, but it's just something to lose a few hours in here and there without any kind of constant pressures and throwing controllers at screens when things aren't going your way. So it's quite enjoyable. And then on the Dreamcast front, this one is quite exciting because I feel like adding this game to my collection now fully integrates me as a Dreamcast Junkyard staff member. Yes, I picked up Spirit of Speed on the Dreamcast. It's been on my list for a while, and I've been checking it out on eBay, and I've actually noticed that the prices have been going up.
Oh,
so
you're joking?
I was like, if I'm going to buy it, I'm going to buy it now.
Yeah.
So I did finally pick that game up, and I will look forward to playing that when it does arrive.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Did you hear mine and Mike's discussion about the flags of?
I did. That was my
flags.
first. It was the subsequent podcast was my first one when you carried on that discussion, and I thought I thought I'd signed up for some random podcast at the time. But again, being obviously a huge motorsport fan, I think I'll at least find some enjoyment out of it and hold that thought, and we'll do a debrief on that one when I've actually had a chance to play it a bit. And then I already have NFL 2K1, but with the 2K series being online now, I thought it's time to pick up some of those. I picked up NBA 2K1, which is really, really good, and I've been playing a lot of NFL 2K1 online as well, which is again brilliant, especially with the football season starting.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you there, James. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about this, or should we just save that for another section in the podcast a bit later on?
Mate, you're the host. You tell me.
No, we'll do it now. I take it you've both played online with DreamPod, with NFL and NBA.
I haven't.
No, I haven't either. Have you, James? I
have, yes.
And how does it play?
Brilliant. Right. As is the case with a lot of these online games, it's remarkable playing them now. And obviously, I'm someone who played Dreamcast Online quite a bit back in the day as well. And it's fascinating to me how I can sit here in 2018, with the sort of technology we've got and broadband gaming and everything. And you can still play a game on a Dreamcast over effectively a modem connection. And it's brilliant. You genuinely wouldn't know the difference for the most part. Some of the technology behind it was obviously remarkable. And I think it's to sit here, as I said, nowadays and still be blown away by the technology, even given what we've got today, is a credit, really. And I think, Mike, when you and I played Star Lancer a couple of months ago online, you'd never know you were playing on a dial-up connection. It was phenomenally smooth.
It was.
Yeah. Sorry, and you were going to say you played something else as well?
I was just going to say my final pickup of the month was a failed article that I was going to have for the Junkyards, which in my wisdom I thought it would be a really fascinating idea to pick up all old memory cards and write about the content that I found on there. So I've been picking a few up here and there anyway, and I was in my local CEX and they had a couple of VMUs for £4 each, so I thought I'll just pick them up. And it just turns out there was like a Sonic Adventure save on one of them, and I forget something else on the other. But I started writing it, and it was just really uninteresting. So it went no further. But again, should anyone want me to continue the pursuit of hidden save files on VMUs, then I'd be more than happy to. But I actually got the idea, incidentally, from I remember some guy went through buying up all the old. Do you remember the Talk Boy? From the Home Alone films.
Oh, yeah, I do. Yeah.
So there was some guy that went through buying all of these Talk Boys up in America from all the thrift shops over there. And every time he would take the contents of the tapes and he would rip the contents of the tapes onto a hard drive somewhere. And he would just basically compile these compilations of all the recordings that people had done on these toy voice recorders. And that was a really interesting read. And then, as I said, when I actually looked at writing about 300 different Sonic Adventure files, the same appeal didn't really ring true. So,
on that topic, though, I do find it quite interesting looking back through my own save files when I'm frantically searching for, say, a Deep Fighter save file because I want to go back to and start off where I left off, like in 2007 or something, and I think. I can actually remember when I last played it, and all these years now into the future, finding the save file that I had and reloading it. I suppose if it's kind of personal to you and your experiences, then it's obviously means a lot more than if it's just some random person you've never met.
Definitely. And the reason we do what we do, right, is because we're fueled by nostalgia. That's fundamentally why we do it. And I think I had a similar experience a couple of years ago when I got my old PlayStation 1 down from the attic, and it was going through all the save files on there, and as you said, it just, the memories just flood back of games that you can't remember playing, and then as soon as you see that icon on the memory card, it all kind of comes back to you. So yeah, I do quite enjoy seeing what's on these cards when I get them, and maybe an article will come of it at some point. We'll see.
Cool, good stuff, mate. Nice. Okay, Mike, let's move on to you. What have you been playing?
Modern gen stuff. I've not been playing much really recently. It's been quite a slow time at the current time. Obviously, F1 coming out soon is going to be my next big one, and of course Shenmue. But I've been playing. Probably the game I've been playing most is Motorsport Manager 3 on the iPhone. It's a series I've been playing since the first one came out, and I think it's on Steam as well. Sega actually published it on Steam. It's just a really fun sort of, quite a basic, and obviously it's a mobile motorsport manager game, but it's good fun. It's they've tried to do a lot more this time, and so they've tried to put a lot more in terms of developing the car. But anyone like sort of motorsport, I'm sure James may have had experience with this game, possibly.
Yeah, I played the second one on Steam,
That's right.
and I've got the mobile one as well. But yeah, it's I didn't even realize there was a new one out. To be honest, I have to check that out.
Isn't this made by Sega?
I think the Steam version is. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think the mobile one is.
I remember getting loads of.
I
remember there was a period where I used to get loads of emails from like Sega PR saying Motorsport Manager out now, and I'd be like, yeah. Cheers.
It's good fun. It's good. It's good fun. It's one of those things where Sega every so often they bring out a random management game to sort of try and go on the success of Football Manager. I think. So you had the East Side Hockey, didn't you, a few years ago, and it didn't really go anywhere. So it's. I think as always, any management game has a massive hurdle to clear, which is whatever sport it's based on, it has to be as good as Football Manager. And I think the bar's been set so high by Football Manager, every other management game always seems a little bit lacking. So, but it's good for what it is. It's good.
It is good. I think it's the licensing is what kills it, because it's like everything else. If you're into your motorsport, that's obviously the target audience. And again, I know they do the mods and everything, but it's just not the same.
It's certainly, it's like playing, I suppose, Dreamcast games. A lot of the games we have don't have licenses for things, and a lot of the retro stuff, you sort of lack something without the actual licensing. It's why the Codemasters racing games on Formula 1 games are so good. If it didn't have licenses, it wouldn't be the same game. And I always feel that's a slight problem with it. Yeah. In terms of other current gen stuff, I've been playing another Codemasters racing game with an unfortunate story behind it at the current time, but On Rush.
Oh, you mentioned this, yeah.
The ranked online play, or the pre-season for the ranked play, is now live as well. Superb game. Same team that did... Was it the same team did Drive Club? I
believe so, yeah. It was a couple of people who came from Drive Club when Evolution Studios shut down, went over to Codemasters, and this is the result of that, I believe. It
really is a fantastic game. It's sold ridiculously low figures, unfortunately. But the game is so fresh and such an interesting game. It's the kind of game you can imagine being on a current gen version of the Dreamcast. It's that sort of blue sky, sort of bright, innovative gaming which you'd imagine from Sega. It's that kind of game. So I quite like it, but it's a real shame that it hasn't hit off quite as well as it should have done. But apart from that, on current gen gaming, not really much more. Dreamcast wise, though, of course, I still have my quest of Dreamcast games. I've now got about 10 games to go to get a complete set.
And this is a complete set, like in like totality, everything.
So that's one of each game
of PAL, NTSC, and NTSCJ.
Yes.
Wow.
So I've got about 10 Japanese games to go now. Obviously, I've already reviewed all the games. So I've obviously done rips before we had the issue at the current time with hosting sites going down. I have played most of the games on downloaded copies. Mm-hmm. But I'm just picking out the last few games now. It's something to do, I suppose.
Yeah, on this topic, I just want to say as well, congratulations on finally finishing the Dreamcast Junkyard A to Z of Dreamcast Games, which we released, I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago now. For those people listening who maybe don't know, if you head to the Dreamcast Junkyard, it's www.dreamcastjunkyard.co.uk. You will see on the right-hand side of the screen, if you're using the desktop version, a little orange sort of poster thing. Click on that link and it will take you to the download for Mike's book, which is an ebook, PDF, and it's literally, as the name suggests, the A to Z of every single Dreamcast game, regardless of the region. There's a little review, a little rating. A phenomenal amount of work has gone into it. As we said on a previous podcast, I think is it like 8 years worth of work or something like that?
It's about that, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really impressive thing, really, that you've created. And I just wanted to give it a special mention, just in case people hadn't seen the social media blitz that we'd put out in the last couple of weeks for it.
It's done quite well. I've had over 3,000 downloads so far, which is pretty good. I don't present myself as sort of an authority or someone who's necessarily the best writer in the world, but it's gone pretty well.
You literally wrote the book on the Dreamcast library, though. Literally. Indeed,
yeah. Well, it goes back to that time I was in CX and someone was talking to me about a Dreamcast when I went to buy one, and they were trying to explain to me about Dreamcast games, and I sort of looked at them in sort of just a sort of hazed look, going, "All right, yeah." But it's certainly been an interesting few years going through all the games. You sort of see games I would never have played. And obviously, it's allowed me to learn a few words in Japanese. It's allowed me to sort of go into things that I would never have usually experienced, which is really interesting.
Mike, that is such an excuse to play these shitty Japanese games.
Damn right. Damn right.
I've just written a book in the last 8 years. I've got to play these games.
Well, that's pretty much the only reason I started writing it for, I think. But I think the thing is that it's from someone who, like myself, who up until probably 10 years ago, I didn't really play anything apart from strategy games, first-person shooters, and sports and racing games. I didn't really play anything else. I didn't play JRPGs, didn't play fighting games, didn't play any of those kind of games at all. So for me, it's been a really sort of interesting experience to go through all these games I've never experienced, and then also getting into the Japanese side of stuff. Although obviously a lot of them are pretty poor. The dating simulation games are generally quite poor. The stories and some of the actual visual novels are actually really, really good. And I think it's interesting to see a culture and to see a way of gaming which is so different than what we're used to. It's actually quite an interesting pursuit, as it were. But as I was saying, that on the Dreamcast, what I've been playing mostly, I've been playing Spirit of Speed. I'm not going to say why I'm playing Spirit of Speed for, but you'll know soon. But it's awful. I've also been playing Donald Duck Quack Attack.
Oh, it's quite good, though.
It's a lovely game. It's sort of it's a really interesting mix of 2D platforming and 3D platforming. Very much like Crash Bandicoot, mix of sort of, it reminds me of Sonic quite a lot because the levels are quite basic. It's not a sort of everything is very, very straightforward. Like some of the Sonic games have always been, where you sort of get the power ups and it's always in the same, run. You don't really have to find secrets that much. But the graphics are really nice for a Dreamcast game. It's just a really fun game.
There's a nice little kind of, not series, because they're not really connected in any way, but there's a good little group of lesser championed, if that's the right way of describing them, platform games on the Dreamcast. So you've got things like KO the Kangaroo, and you've got obviously Super Magnetic Neo. You've got this Donald Duck Quack Attack. I believe Donald Duck came out on the PS2 as well, didn't it, under a different name? Was it Donald Duck Going Quackers or something like that?
That's the American version of
right.
the Dreamcast game.
Yeah,
the American version is Donald Duck Going Quackers. It's a really interesting game because it's not something which is really mentioned that much, but the graphics are sort of. There's a lot of these kind of cartoon games on Dreamcast like this, and Looney Tunes and Wacky Racers, but the graphics are really, really impressive.
Yeah, I can't remember. Is it cel shaded?
It's not, but there are elements where it's sort of you can see they were going for that look.
Yeah.
And then the last game we've been playing on Dreamcast as well, again, very odd, 102 Dalmatians. Now, the reason I'm playing 102 Dalmatians is because when I did a review of it many, many years ago for the book, my now wife, had it when she had a Dreamcast when she was a kid, and she basically had this game. And I never really played it that much. And so I sort of went through it, this and Chicken one I was sort of going through. And I knew there was lots of mini games on there, but I didn't really touch on them when I was doing a review. So I play it and sort of go through the mini games. And the first mini game on the game is a mini golf game, and it's incredibly good fun. So I've now found my favourite mini game on the Dreamcast, which is bizarrely a crazy golf game on 102 Dalmatians. There's loads of mini games on the game. It's actually quite, again, one of those little movie tie-in games that are sort of would have been forgotten on the PlayStation and the PC. No one would have looked at them. On the Dreamcast, they sort of become suddenly a little bit more interesting.
My experience with 102
like Toy Story 2 and
my experience with 102 Dalmatians is literally I was just doing the first level because you have to run around. You're like in a park or something, aren't you? You have to like run around and jump in fountains and stuff and collect bits and pieces. And isn't there a guy chasing you like a bloke?
There is, one of Cruella de Vil's minions, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a again, I think with Dreamcast is that a lot of the genres we don't really have any major players on. The things like platforming, although there are some sort of hidden gems like Super Neo and stuff like that. There is a lack of real quality, so we do play these kind of games. But I think I like that because these games would have been completely forgotten, and they would have been completely and utterly disregarded. On Spirit of Speed, for instance, it's probably got more attention because of it's known as a bad game on a Dreamcast than it ever would have been if it had been another PS1 game. Because obviously, so many bad PS1 racing games, you've never known. I thought I like that because I think that's the real, that's how games. That's why we like games so much, because they've got this sort of thing where we can look at bad games and we can sort of take some things from bad games as well. I always can anyway.
The one like that always sticks out for me on the Dreamcast was Blue Stinger, which I know wasn't a terrible game, but it was just one of those games that got, I think, to your point, it got a lot more sort of renown because it was an early Dreamcast sort of, supposed to be the next big thing than it would have done if it was released on anything else. And I've always had a little bit of a soft spot for something like Blue Stinger, even though it's mediocre at best, I think is probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah. It also features the lovely fizzy drink Hassie, so there's that.
But apart from that, I think that's been it's been an interesting week on Dreamcast for me, or an interesting month on Dreamcast, because I've been trying to play for all these games that I've sort of only touched upon. So I've been playing a few of them like MSR and stuff, and just trying to get through some games. Le Mans, which I've been playing, and V Rally, which has now become my favourite Dreamcast game again, because I love V Rally on Dreamcast.
It's a good game, good version.
It is great.
As for me, I've been playing on the PS4 quite a bit. I don't even mention this. I think I hadn't done it by that point, but since our last podcast, I've sold my Switch. So I've mainly just been playing on the PS4 for current gen stuff. And I've mainly been playing Titanfall 2, Alien Isolation, a lot of games that came out a while back, but I didn't play at the time, but are now really cheap. Yep. So Alien Isolation, I'm really impressed with it. It was like £5 or something.
Yeah, it's a great game.
That was my game of the year in whenever year it came out, 2015 maybe, 2014, I can remember. Yeah. But I thought that was phenomenal. I thought that was they just nailed the atmosphere around Alien, and you feel so helpless in that game when you're kind of hiding in an oven as the alien just comes and sort of creeps past you. But I thought that game was utterly brilliant.
I love all the little touches, like sort of nods to kind of like VHS movies where you can pause it and they've got like the pause kind of fuzz and all that kind of thing, and just the way the cutscenes are really like low res and like the tracking's off on your VHS tape or something.
And I love the terminals and stuff as well when you use the terminals, and it was all the old sort of, I was going to do the Jurassic Park, the Linux-based system thing then, but it's all the command line stuff on there. It's just, I thought it was just brilliant.
Yeah, love it. I have also been playing quite a bit on the PSVR because I didn't rediscover it. It's been in my sort of games room for, the last couple of months since I bought it, but I just kind of, after the initial wow factor, I kind of fell off it, but then I picked it up again the other day, and I was just like, let's actually have a go on this and see if I can actually, get some fun out of it. Obviously, it's a great bit of kit, but just going down the route of playing loads and loads of games, and got back into Doom VFR. Actually stood up with the Move controllers and It's actually a lot better than trying to sit down and play it if you stand up, which I only kind of discovered recently, the PSVR. Another game, Thumper, which I completely bounced off when I tried to play it on the Switch. I just didn't get it. I didn't understand why people were raving over it so much. A couple of people did say to me, play it in VR, because it's a completely different game. I know Aaron did, the Gaga Man, he told me to play it in VR. And it was only this week that I decided, right, I'll give it a go in VR. And because you're completely encapsulated in the world, all the kind of musical cues and the way that it's all based around creating a beat kind of becomes more apparent than if you're just trying to play it on a TV or if you're trying to play it on the Switch on the bus. Do you know what I mean? It's like you have to be fully immersed in it to actually get it, I think. So that completely changed it for me. It's a fantastic game. A game we're going to talk about a little bit later on in more depth. I have been lucky enough to be playing or been given access to the upcoming Shenmue and Shenmue II reissues for the PS4. So yeah, I've got some thoughts on those that I'm likely to, well, not likely to, I will share with with you and the listeners in a little while. And another game I've been playing is Tanglewood on Steam. Tanglewood is the game that came out for the Mega Drive recently, the result of the Kickstarter. Are you aware of this? Yeah. It's coming to the Dreamcast as well. I don't know exactly when, but
well, it only missed its Kickstarter by a very small amount, didn't it?
Did it?
For the Dreamcast version.
Oh, right. Yeah. Did it not get the stretch goal for the Dreamcast? I thought it did.
No, it didn't.
Right.
90 quid short, I think it was.
Was it? Is that all? Anyway, I messaged them on Twitter, and they said, yeah, it's coming along. It's all in place. The engine's running. Hopefully, we'll have some footage of it running on our Dreamcast very soon. So that's things are looking good for the Dreamcast library going forward. On that topic, we will talk a little bit about some of the other games that have recently come out on the Dreamcast. One of which is Fade to Black. You've been playing that one, Mike. We'll talk about that in a while. I think on the Dreamcast, I it's not a game I've bought and it's not a game I've played. I have it queued up and ready to go. It's an indie game called Rizzo Island, which is a game that's been created by a one-man team who created this game kind of in memory of his uncle who passed away. His uncle was a musician, and he's created this kind of 3D platform adventure, which is dedicated to his uncle's memory, where he's using music from his uncle's music catalogue that he created while he was alive. It's just like a nice little homage to him, and I do have that queued up and ready to go as soon as I can burn it onto a disc. I've been having issues with the laptop that I use for burning games, so just in case he's listening and he's wondering why I've not done anything yet on the Dreamcast Junkyard, that's why.
Tom, I feel like ever since I've known you, and when I say know you, I mean listened to you, that you've been complaining about burning games on your laptop.
It's an ongoing struggle. It's an ongoing struggle, mate. Obviously, because I use a Mac, I've said this before, my girlfriend has a laptop, a Windows laptop, but it's just really, really crap, and I'm always having issues with it. The other game I picked up is a game that I think we've spoken about before as well. It's TNN Hardcore Heat, which is the American version of Buggy Heat. The game I love for some reason on the Dreamcast, even though in all its jankiness, I think it's a lot of fun. And I picked that game up at Play Expo, what am I talking about? Play Expo London last weekend, which was a really cool event to go to. I was actually there as part of the RetroCollect.com team. And weirdly, two independent people who were not paid in any way actually came up to me throughout the course of the day and asked me if I was Tom from the Dreamcast Junkyard. Naturally, I said, yes, I am Tom for the Dreamcast Junkyard. How may I help you? One guy said he recognised my voice from the podcast, which is interesting.
Weird.
Yeah. But it was weird to be kind of recognised from my voice alone. But,
I've got this vision now of, do you remember in Games Master where you'd have these kids coming up to the Games Master saying, Games Master, could you help me about that? I've got this vision of people coming up to you now asking you about Dreamcast questions they've burning questions they've had for like 10 years.
I've got Tom in the image of him in the Games Master actually.
Dreamcast.
Do you know why?
Do
you know what?
Dreamcast Master, I've not been able to burn CDs for the past 3 years. Can you please help me?
I'm the last person you want to ask. No, it's funny you mentioned that because one guy did. If he's listening to the podcast, he did ask me when's the next podcast coming out. So this is the answer to your prayers. But weirdly, he did actually come up to me with a a Dreamcast SCART cable and asked me if it was an official one. Because it was in a Sega Dreamcast PAL box, and I don't think it was an official one. I think whoever he bought it from had kind of shoved a third party one into a box, and that's why he seeked me out to ask me. I hope I got it right. I hope it wasn't an official one. It didn't look like one to me.
He's probably thrown it out now, and it is an official one.
Yeah. So if it is, and I apologise.
Interestingly, when I went to, I don't know if it was actually since the last podcast or not, actually, but I went to the Bristol gaming market. So the first time the gaming market came out to Bristol, a couple of about a month and a half ago now, and I wore my Dreamcast Junkyard T-shirt. And so a couple of people that I knew from Twitter and stuff talked to me, which is fair enough. But I was twice. Someone came up to me and asked me a question about Dreamcast. Once when I was buying the Dreamcast karaoke machine, and someone actually asked me a random question about Dreamcast. And then afterwards, I was looking at I think it was Saw Thumb games bit.
Oh yeah.
I was looking at some Dreamcast games, and some guy came up to me randomly and said, "Oh, do you know what this game's about?" And I was like, "Mate, I know I got a Dreamcast Junkyard T-shirt on, but..." So of course I then went and talked to him for ages about it anyway, because that's the kind of person I am. But yeah, I thought it was a bit weird. Didn't know who I was, but
no, it's pretty cool that people kind of recognise the sort of not the brand as it were, but the the blog, the site, the community that we are integral parts of, I suppose. Excellent. On the topic of Play Expo London, just wanted to give a little bit of information out about an upcoming event that we will be doing in October, end of October this year, and that is Play Expo Blackpool. That's where we're going to be having the big kind of 20th anniversary of the Dreamcast display celebration, if that's what you want to call it. We will have about 50 Dreamcasts, maybe, on free play for people to come up and play. We'll have all different kinds of peripherals. Myself, Mike, you'll be there. James, hopefully you'll be able to make it at some point over the weekend. A couple of the other guys from the Dreamcast Junkyard will all be kind of milling around. We'll also have a special helper, Santa's little helper, in the form of Adam Koralik. YouTube's Adam Koralik will be there with us. So please harass him as much as you can. Stroke his beard. Just ask him stupid questions about YouTube. He loves it. So yeah, that's coming up end of October. So hopefully everyone and anyone listening to this, you can make it to Blackpool on those dates. We'll come and say hello and buy us beer. That's always good. We should get up on a stage at some point and play higher or lower according to the A to Z of Dreamcast Games official Dreamcast Junkyard guidebook, and see if people can guess if Chicken Run got a higher or lower score than something like, I'm flicking through now, Coaster Works. Oh, those are like real kind of, I don't know, like middle of the road games. It's you can't really tell. How. Come on,
then, higher or lower than Coaster Works?
What was the game again?
The first game I said was Chicken Run. Is it higher or lower than Coaster Works?
I'm going to go higher. I know Mike is quite partial to Chicken Run, so I'm going to go higher.
Yeah, it's all, I don't know myself, to be honest with you.
Go on then, put us out.
I'm guessing lower.
They're both the same. So there we go.
Interestingly enough, for the entire guide, the game I use as my average, so the game I use as my point blank, this is the average game, is Aqua GT on Dreamcast. It is the most average video game. They probably would have put that
on the box if you'd said that back in.
I know. It's so average.
It's such a boring game, isn't it? It's just like
it is. But there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing actually wrong with it. So you sort of play it and you're sort of going, oh yeah, it's all right. Yeah, but it's nothing weird. It's a weird game.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we should now do a new feature where we come up with a quote for the box of every single game and mock up the art.
Aqua GT, it's just average, and then Mike Dreamcast Junkyard underneath it. On the topic of Mike and games.
Oh, hello.
What an amazing segue. I'm known for those, by the way, around these parts. Mike, you've been playing a game called Fade to Black, which came out on the PlayStation originally and PC many moons ago. Recently released on the Dreamcast by Josh Prod. We do have a review coming soon, but Mike, I want to ask you your thoughts and just interrogate you basically about Fade to Black. So please tell us all about Fade to Black on the Dreamcast.
Okay, so Fade to Black is Flashback 2. So it's the sort of next step on from that quite long series of games they've got. But it's a 3D it's a very old, one of the first 3D action adventure, I suppose, if you want to call it as that kind of game.
Yeah.
And so it's very much of its time. It doesn't look, don't expect it to be sort of this extravagant 3D extravaganza on the Dreamcast. It's just it's a 1996, I think it came out originally, 95 possibly. So it's quite an old 3D game. It's not necessarily built for a Dreamcast controller either, so it takes a while to get used to all the controls. But saying all of that, it's actually pretty good. There's lots of puzzles. It's a very puzzle. It's basically a 3D version of Flashback. It is pretty much that. The actual shoot-in element has always been a little bit of a nightmare for the game. It's always been a little bit not as accurate as you'd like it to be. I remember back on the PC many years ago. But in actual terms of the actual conversion to the Dreamcast, perfect conversion. Runs brilliantly. I think it's the PC version.
I know as much. Yeah, I was going to ask. Yeah, I
think it might have even been James who actually asked on Twitter, or someone asked on Twitter. Asked Josh Pod if it was the PC, or it was Kev actually, if it was the PC or PS1 version. They didn't answer, but I'm pretty sure it'd be interesting if they did a PS1 version of Dreamcast. I'd imagine that'd be quite difficult. The PC version itself, it looks very good. The textures are pretty much what I remember it on the PC. It's a good conversion. It's
kind of
really
like
interesting game.
For those people who probably never or have never seen Fade to Black, it's almost like it's almost like an over the shoulder kind of into the screen, kind of running around shooting things. Up. if that's how you want to describe it.
Yeah, it's definitely, you can see it's the age. The age is there. I think even at the time,
I was going to say the age in 1996 was a big turn off for 12-year-old me who was desperate. I just had my PlayStation kind of within the first year of it coming out, and it was like all these new 3D things, and Mario 64 was around the corner. And I do remember seeing a demo of Fade to Black on one of the PlayStation magazine demos and thinking, I'm not even going to play that because it looked shit.
Well, I was a big PC gamer back in 96, 97, so it was sort of that between 95 and 2000. The 3D games developed so quickly.
Yeah.
I was playing Jedi Knight, Dark Forces 2 on the PC yesterday, and one of my favorite games of all time. And it looks so poor compared to what was out on the Dreamcast just 2 years later. We had Soul Calibur on Dreamcast 2 years later.
Yeah.
The quality difference is so huge. I think Fade to Black is very much like that. Fade to Black to me, it's that kind of era of. And Tom will know this probably more than most of us, but the sort of racing games that Jaguar was known for, those sort of virtual racing,
kind of flat, shaded polygons, and
exactly
5 frames per second.
It's actually visually, it's actually quite charming when you look back at it now. But yes, at the time it was just I'll move on, thanks. The irony is that I actually had Bubsy 3D for Christmas that year, which I would have traded in for Fade to Black any day of the week.
I think. What is the most interesting thing from Josh Prod is, again, it's they're putting games out that we never really thought we'd get. I don't think any of us thought that within the next few years, when we started doing the podcast, for instance, I don't think any of us thought that within the next few years we'd have a version of a 1995 well-received 3D action adventure coming onto the Dreamcast.
What's the actual gameplay like, Mike? What's the story like, and the puzzles and stuff? Is it actually worth picking up and playing for someone who's not played it before?
It's not massively story based.
Okay.
The story is sort of the background, very much like Flashback. Sort of the sort of it's done through very, very small cutscenes and things like that. It is about the puzzle elements and the sort of action elements. It's a decent game. It's a decent game. It's a very difficult game to recommend because we're so used now to smooth, really good 3D games. When this came out, this was a sort of an example of how great 3D gaming could be and the direction it was going in. It's difficult now to sort of go, yeah, this is, we know the Dreamcast can do better than this. Dreamcast has better 3D games than this.
So if I had Aqua GT in one hand and Fade to Black in the other,
Fade to Black. Fade to Black, because Aqua GT is so boring. But it's still a good game. I think of the 5 games they released, it's probably the most interesting.
Yeah. What's the packaging like? Do you get like a manual and stuff?
Yeah. So manual for all the games. It's not a very long manual. I believe it's just basically 2 pages of English with the controls on it, and then all the other different languages. Yeah. Same as they've got for all of their different manuals. Yeah. It's a pretty much, it's a bare minimum, as it were. Probably more than you get in modern day games, but it's a difficult game because I think the other games they've got out is the Battlecrust, Another World,
the
Escapee, which is a game I absolutely love, and the other game which is Bang to Busters, or Bang Bang Busters. They're all really interesting games, and I think again with JoshPod is the fact that the support they're getting, especially from ourselves at Junkyard, other people, part of the support is that we know if we keep supporting them, they're going to bring out some really, really stunning games. Some of the games they hinted at have been fantastic, look fantastic, and really are interesting ones.
It's an interesting way that they kind of moving away from the more kind of Neo Geo emulated versions of games to full-on 3D games, which bodes well for what may come next. I know that recently they had a poll up on their Facebook page. We actually did a news article about this on the main site. Right. They're asking people to vote on what they would like to see next. And it's just interesting that they've included things like 3D Racer, survival horror, I believe, is one option that I think he actually left that off, but it was meant to include that. So that opens up the door for things like Resident Evil 1, potentially. Alone in the Dark, I think could they be coming?
It's Alone in the Dark is very likely. I think that's because I think Alone in the Dark French developed.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
obviously they do seem to have quite a big thing with the French developed games, which makes sense.
Was it Infogrames? Infogrames, wasn't it?
I think Infogrames published it. Yeah, I'm not quite sure who developed it, but I think it might be the same guy. I'm sure it was French. I'm sure
it was definitely very French.
But there's, I think, a lot of Alone in the Dark. Actually, that's a really good call. The first Alone in the Dark game, or Alone in the Dark 2, would be really good because that's sort of another good early 3D game. But I think they've got so many interesting ideas. I think we don't know what they've got coming 100%. We know a couple of things that people don't know, but I think some of the things they've got in mind, I just have a real funny feeling in the next year we could be getting some major games.
How about this, Mike? Right?
Yeah,
we've seen Fade to Black, which is a PC. It's a port of a PC game or an emulation of a PC game. How about if they started to bring across all the PC games which were originally slated for Dreamcast releases, such as Kingpin or
Kingpin's fantastic.
Alien vs Predator.
This exactly.
I mean?
This is the thing. 96, 97 to 2001 is my era. That's when I was massively into games on the PC, and so the amount of games that there's going to come over, potentially could get licensed for and bring over, are just absolutely amazing. We could see some of the games like Heroes of Magic and Might could finally get a release. Apparently there's collectors do have betas of the game, and it runs well. But there are so many really interesting games. A licensed Half-Life, it's not impossible. You know what I mean? There's so many things they could do, and I think they just you have to give a lot of respect to JoshPod for developing for yet again. It is a Dreamcast. It's not a major console.
Maybe we'll get Half-Life 3 exclusively on Dreamcast.
I think so. I think Half-Life 3. Wow.
Okay,
we probably get Half-Life 3. Yeah.
It's an interesting topic, but I think we should possibly move on to our next item of discussion. I think this is one that you wanted to discuss, James. Talk to us about Retrobit.
Yeah, just briefly. So we had a bit of PR come out around the much touted new controller range they are bringing out, and they've kind of confirmed what the first batch that are going to be available from November. The sad news is that none of those are Dreamcast related, unfortunately. So the first lineup is going to be Mega Drive / Genesis wired 6-button, 8-button controllers. Presumably the Mega Drive and Genesis versions are nothing more than the the name printed on the thing itself. So they're going to bring in wired versions of the 6 and 8 button controllers out, one with an original port, one with a USB port. They're also doing a Bluetooth controller for both as well. And then they've got the same for the Saturn. So there's wired controller port with the original controller port, the USB controller port, and then the Bluetooth controller port for the Saturn as well.
That's looking quite interesting, the Saturn one. I'd like to see how that performs. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously it's great news that these are coming. They're apparently going to be showing these off at Gamescom, which is next week. So I'm sure we'll get some hands-on impressions from various sources next week. But yeah, obviously the biggest disappointment here is the omission of anything Dreamcast related, which is, I hope it's not the sign of bad news, and that Dreamcast stuff is still coming. But it's just interesting how they've covered the other 3 systems or the other 2 systems, and Dreamcast is not included.
I'm not entirely sure where it was that I heard this, but I heard or read somewhere, and again, I'm pulling this right from the depths of my recent memory, that there were some issues with the Dreamcast hardware or something, and that the person who was writing the article or producing the video, again, I can't remember which it was, had doubts that the Dreamcast stuff would even come to fruition. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope the person who also put that into my mind, again, person's unknown, can't remember exactly where I read that or watched it. Obviously, I hope that's wrong, because I think that even as good as the Dreamcon is, it's quite prohibitively priced. £100, I think, is the price at the moment. If these things from Retrobit could come out at a lower price point, maybe 30 or even like 40 quid, I think it would give a lot more people a chance to own a wireless controller for the Dreamcast.
Yeah, I spoke to the PR guys, and they put me in touch with the guys who were actually building the things back in April, to just say obviously that we were involved in the Dreamcast scene with regards to the Junkyard, and they'd contacted me back at the time actually to say that they're in the kind of concept construction phase, and they'd be interested in working alongside us for feedback, promotion, reviews, and that sort of stuff. So cool. I'll drop them a line and just see what's up, because yeah, when I spoke to them the last, like I said, back in April, it was the similar thing for the Dreamcast. It was supposed to be USB, original port, and Bluetooth for Dreamcast as well. So I guess something is up, because I don't see any other reason why they'd focus on those systems. I mean, there's an argument to say that emulation might be more of a scene for Mega Drive and Saturn than Dreamcast.
Yeah, that's a point. Mm-hmm.
But you know, it just seems strange to me. So as you said, Tom, I think it'd be awesome if they do come out at a reasonable price point, and I'm definitely interested to see what the Saturn controllers are. It was again, I was hoping they'd create the Saturn analog controller.
The 3D one,
which is not on the list. Yeah, but there you go.
Interesting.
So we shall see. As I said. Yeah, next week they're coming out in Gamescom, so we'll see the quality at least, and then hopefully if the Dreamcast one does raise its head again, it'll fall in line with the others.
Yeah, excellent, cool. Okay, let's move on swiftly to the next topic. This is one that unfortunately I'll be talking about, so apologies for my voice just up front. Shenmue is back. Guess who's back? It's Ryo Hazuki. He's on your PlayStation and he's on your Xbox One. And I've been lucky enough to sample the PlayStation 4 version on my PlayStation 4 Pro. And yeah, it's every bit as Shenmue-y as you probably remember. It's interesting, and it's also a little bit weird playing Shenmue with a PlayStation controller. Obviously, you could do that if you plugged in like a Total Control and plugged it into a Dreamcast and played Shenmue. You could play the original Shenmue with a PlayStation controller, but just thought it was worth mentioning that, it seems a bit odd playing it on a PS4 now in 2018. But yeah, initial impressions. I know that there's a review embargo, which I believe is up tomorrow, but as this isn't a review, I don't think it's going to get us into trouble. I just wanted to speak a little bit about my initial impressions and some of the kind of cool, interesting little things that I spotted while playing it for the hour or so that I've spent with it so far. First thing I want to say is that it's Shenmue. It's, if you've ever played Shenmue and you put this in, it's everything that you would expect from playing it on the Dreamcast. It's exactly the same, even down to the kind of like the models that they use for like foliage in the in Ryu Hazuki's garden. Everything's the same. It's just a higher resolution, which can look a bit weird at times because it's not like a remake. Like you get these like remasters of like old games from like Xbox 360 or whatever on the new systems, and they kind of do all the textures and everything again. Well, they've not done anything like that. It's literally just the Dreamcast game, but with a higher resolution. So textures like on people's jackets or on the floor or on the trees or whatever, it does look a bit kind of if you play a Nintendo 64 game on an emulator on a PC. And you get that kind of really kind of blurry.
Yeah.
Everything looks really sharp, but at the same time, all the textures look like really like
sharp and shit.
Basically, that's the word I was looking for. The term I was looking for. Yeah, sharp and shit. Well, that's what it looks like. That's what Shenmue looks like.
Put it on the box.
But it's it's amazing to see it looking so like new and clean and fresh, and I'm playing it on a 4K TV as well, so it does look, the character models, everything like that, just look really stunning, but the textures are pretty much ripped from the Dreamcast version, or certainly for Shenmue 1, and it just looks a bit, I don't know if they're going to patch something here. Can they even do that with a patch? I don't know. Another thing that I kind of it's not an issue, but it's something I noticed, is that it almost seems like they've taken the exact voice samples from the Dreamcast version in all their kind of extremely low quality glory and just kind of shoved them onto the new game. So even though the music and everything in the background is just as phenomenal as it always was back in the day and super crisp, sounds great, the audio for the voice acting sounds like it's been recorded in somebody's boot, the boot of the car. And it's almost like it's got like a bit of a hiss around it, when they talk. It's really jarring, the sort of the juxtaposition between the music sounding amazing and the sound being like really kind of muffled almost. That was a bit odd. But apart from that, I mean, there are those little additions, like little additional kind of quality of life things that make it brings it up to speed with like what gamers would expect a game to control. Like, for example, so you can use the analog sticks to move around. You can turn off like special filters for like visuals, so you've got like bloom effects, which looks quite nice actually. So yeah, you got like light bloom. You can also change the resolution between like super high res and also original resolution, so it actually literally looks like a Dreamcast game on your 4K telly. Like kind of like bit grainy, bit kind of jaggedy with on the edges. So that's a nice little touch. And something else I noticed as well, which was really cool, is when you go into the controller menu, it's got like a Dreamcast controller, and when you go to the save menu, there's like a VMU. So I don't know if that's like the first time that's ever been on like certainly on a PlayStation 4, that those kind of that imagery has been used. I'm not sure about the Xbox, because I know that the Dreamcast collection is on Xbox 360 and is it backwards compatible on Xbox One? So
I don't think so. No. But yeah,
okay. But you get what I'm saying. It's just a nice little touch that they thought to include that. It's a nice little nod to the game's origins. But yeah, everything is pretty much as it was. You've got the same sound effects, that kind of like really high pitched noise that when you select things in the menu. All the kind of nice kind of incidental music, the cutscenes, everything. It's basically as you were, but with a nicer, high res sort of image quality.
So when you do your write-up for this on the Junkyard, I think you should get a screenshot of, the bit where you get back to your house and he opens up the cabinet and there's the beautiful Japanese Sega Saturn.
Oh yeah.
So you should take a picture of that, but replace the Sega Saturn and then say that there's a secret cheat code that we're going to give out one part of the cheat code every podcast. And if you put that cheat code in, it replaces the Saturn with a Dreamcast 2 or something like that. I think that should be.
It replaces it with It replaces it with what was it called? Project Razor? Was that it?
Yeah.
But yeah, initial thoughts are very positive. I would probably say that I believe that there's going to be like some patch or something that comes out on the day that the game actually goes live on the store, which will address some sort of minor issues, little glitches and things here and there. But as far as I can see, as of now, playing it myself, this is probably the best way to get into Shenmue if you've not previously played it. I know we've mentioned on the podcast in the past that this is literally again, a game very much of its time. It is literally Shenmue from 1999, 2000. If people run into this, having never played Shenmue before, hoping to play a big open world adventure game like Grand Theft Auto 4 or something, they're going to be disappointed. It's not. I just hope that people remember that it is basically a Dreamcast game in high res. Shenmue 2, I believe, is the Xbox version. So I just hope that people realise that and don't feel disappointed when they realise that it's not probably what they hope it's going to be.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see both how it reviews and also how it sells. I really couldn't tell you which way it's going to go, and I think, to your point, Tom, I think there'll be a lot of people who have kind of got caught up in the hype that has surrounded the series sort of secondhand, if you know what I mean. So they would have never owned a Dreamcast or probably picked up a Dreamcast controller. And I think I said on the last time we discussed this, I think that's the biggest worry for me. It's kind of like, oh, this must be an amazing game. You know, it's talked about in the same way that Nintendo fans talk about Mario 64 or whatever. And I worry that, when people pick it up, it's just going to be, this is a bit weird and clumsy.
Yeah, that's my fear as well, to be honest. And I think we're kind of in almost a privileged position, you know, having played the original on the Dreamcast and own it, and can play it anytime we like. Whereas people who maybe don't own a Dreamcast and never played Shenmue, this will be their first real exposure to the game. And you know, those textures are jarring. If you come off playing something like Titanfall 2, just an example, and then you jump into Shenmue, and you are literally presented with it. As I said, a game from 1999, which has just been up-resed. You know, it is very jarring. It doesn't look like a current-gen game. So I just hope people bear that in mind and expectations are tempered. And basically just enjoy the story. You know, let it all come together and don't kind of pick at one point of it and focus on that. I can see it now. I can see... You know how... I don't know if you guys listen to like any like major like video game podcasts or what kind of games websites you visit. I kind of listen to a mixture of different games podcasts when I'm out running, for example, and there almost seems to be this kind of, it's cool to bash Shenmue, do you know what I mean, in a lot of these podcasts, certainly some of the American ones I listen to, and I just hope that it doesn't become this kind of, oh, Shenmue is not the game that everyone thought it was kind of thing, and this kind of backlash in gaming media, inverted commas.
I think the thing is that if you look back at the reviews of Shenmue when it came out, a lot of magazines didn't like it. Yeah,
it's true. You're right.
And a lot of reviewers, they gave it relatively good scores, like 8s or 9s out of 10s, but they actually didn't like the game very much, and they criticised a lot of stuff with it. So it's going to be interesting to see what the people now reviewing games are going to be thinking, because if it didn't, you know, we all have this, like, a lot of us love Shenmue, and, you know, we know how good it is, but it's also one of those Marmite games. I know that, you know, we both know people, we all know people, I'm sure, who don't like Shenmue, who really don't like Shenmue.
I think just to add to that point, Mike, I think back in the day, part of the reason why Shenmue was reviewed so well, even though there were a lot of issues that were quite often highlighted in the review, was because it got a lot of bonus points for being so ambitious.
Yes.
I think what people need to understand is there was nothing like this at the time, especially in the console scene.
Yeah.
And when Shenmue came out, it was a really big deal. You know, it was the first of its kind in many different ways. I mean, even little things like QuickTime events, you know, that's something that's still going on in games today. And that was, you know, Shenmue was arguably one of the first games to integrate that into you know, a standard kind of adventure type game to break up that kind of disconnect between gameplay and cutscenes. And, you know, you look back at PlayStation games, especially at the time when you had FMV sequences, there was a real disconnect between this beautifully rendered FMV sequence and then this blocky character that you take over straight after. So it was a revolutionary game. And I think a lot of the time, as you said, Mike, even though it was given 8 and 9s for that reason, you know, people, the flaws were very well highlighted even at the time. So, as you said, Tom, I think there will be a lot of people that downplay the significance of it, and I think a lot of people will play it for half an hour, then never play it ever again.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
I think the one thing that you've got to say here is that, you know, we know that Sega are pretty bad at responding to, you know, what fans want them to do with their IP in general. And they have abused some IP in the past. And I think we wouldn't be sitting here if there wasn't a tremendous amount of fan support for this game to happen.
Yeah.
And I think obviously no one expected the Shenmue 3 announcement to happen in the first place, and then when it did, I don't think anyone expected it to get as much popularity as it did. And I think as soon as that happened, I think the remakes were always going to happen, because the game is so inaccessible for anyone to jump in and play. I mean, just the fact that there are not that many Dreamcast consoles out there for a start, coupled with the fact that I think when Shenmue 3 was announced, the Shenmue 1 and 2, they were selling for like 200 quid or something, ridiculous. I mean, the prices settled down now back to sort of 40, 50 quid, but still, there's obviously demand there.
I think there's one note of positivity, though, is the fact that actually I think it's probably the best time for the game to come out. Mm-hmm. I think, if people who are into Grand Theft Auto or into open world games, if they're the ones buying Shenmue, they may come away disappointed. But there's so many games out there at the current time. The popularity of Yakuza, which is selling really, really well at the current time. I know it's not the same game as Shenmue, but it's very, very similar themes.
Yeah.
And games like the Telltale games, those kind of adventure games, they're really, really popular at the current time. And I think that is the audience that Shenmue should be going for, and not the people who want the next Red Dead Redemption game. Because I think it's a slow burner. It's more of an experience, Shenmue, than it ever has been about sort of an all-out action game. And so I think it's the right time now, with the popularity of those Japanese games like Yakuza, and with the popularity of those kind of adventure-based games. I think it's the right time.
Yeah, just a kind of almost like a closing thought on this. I'm going to be very interested to read the impressions and opinions of professional games journalists who perhaps weren't even born when Shenmue first hit the scene, and maybe have never even given it a second thought until now, because it's new and it's got a bit of a buzz around it. I'm very interested to see what those people, these people who like write for Polygon and Kotaku and all these other big websites. I want to see what they think, and whether they actually give it the time of day. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the fact that they haven't completely remastered the thing will probably work in its favor in some way, because it won't feel like a contemporary game, and so it doesn't need to look like one. So I think, ironically, the fact that it is just a straight up port, effectively you're just playing an emulated version of it. I think that will probably work, as I said, to its favor. I've got an Xbox One copy coming next week. I'm looking forward to playing it. I played it when it first came out more because I felt like I should play it. It was one of those games for me where it was like I didn't really follow it coming up to launch, and it was just I am a Dreamcast fanboy. I should probably get this game and play this game, I don't really have that many memories of it, so I'm looking forward to actually sitting down and running through the story, probably with my wife, and actually enjoying the thing from start to finish.
Cool. Yeah, I think the one thing that we can take away from this is that, from my impressions, just playing it there. I mean, because I've not played the original Shenmue for it must be years now. I played through it the whole in its entirety. Several years ago, would have been early 2000s. Going back and playing it now, it was almost like going back to see an old friend.
Yeah.
And it all came flooding back, all the initial cutscene in the dojo, and walking around Ryo's house, going out for a little bit of a wander around the little neighborhood. All of that, it just came flooding back, and it's just a really nice, cool thing to have on current gen systems.
Yeah, I've played it. I've played it every couple of years since 2003, and every single time you find new things. It's one of those games which, just for Dreamcast fans especially,
25 quid is a really good entry point for that as well.
For two massive games that you'll get absolute hours of entertainment out of. That is unbeatable. I mean, they could have literally released the two games for that price each, but to put them both together in one package is well played, to be honest, Sega.
Yeah.
That's brilliant to get people intrigued enough to go, I'll get that. So then I'll play them both, and then maybe when Shenmue 3 comes out, look, I've played those two. Shenmue 3's out now. Well played.
Yeah.
Very much so.
I think the price point will definitely help. Just one more comment on Shenmue, and then we can move on. But I just wanted to say, I remember reading in a magazine. I can't remember for the life of me where it was, back in many years ago now. because I never realized that Shenmue was sort of started life on the Saturn, and I remember seeing all the Saturn screenshots of it, and I remember being just like blown away at how like that game just would never have worked on a Saturn. And I remember seeing that and thinking, yeah, this looks, it's really impressive what they did with it on the Dreamcast. I don't know if you guys have seen the Saturn stuff or
yeah. The bit where he's on that bike, he's on a push bike, and he's riding around as well.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, I've got my, I've still got my Shenmue guide from the Dreamcast. I might get that out. I might see if I can use it on the new version. But you probably can. It's exactly the same game, innit? So that'll be interesting. Yeah. Okay, that's enough Shenmue methinks for one episode. By the time people hear this, it will be out and ready to be played by everybody out there listening to this. I'm sure they'll all be diving in at some point. Is there anything else we want to talk about? Do you want to do your quiz, James?
Well, it wasn't going to be a quiz, but I just thought I've got the so given that it is the month of August at the moment, I pulled up some magazines from the Dreamcast's history. I was going to give this a catchy name and then do the whole Dominic Diamond from Games Master in a feature we like to call, that's my shameless plug for him, to try and get him to retweet this. But I couldn't come up with a catchy name for it, so maybe we'll save that for another episode. So I just thought we'd quickly talk about some of the games that were reviewed back in August, August 2000. So sort of take yourself back 18 years, and if you played any of these games at the time, or if you played them since, and hopefully you'll have at least one story to tell. Otherwise, this could be a really short feature. So these, and Tom, I'm sure you've covered these in your series on your YouTube channel, which I've watched avidly when you went through each magazine page by page. So this one is from the September issue of Dreamcast magazine, but obviously I wanted to do September, given that would have covered all of the news that was happening in August. So the games they reviewed were WWF Royal Rumble.
Yes.
Yeah. Any takers on that one?
It's. I mean, as far as wrestling games go on the Dreamcast, certainly the Western released ones. That's probably the best one. The Japanese only ones are probably far superior in pretty much every way. Things like Power. Was it Fire Pro Wrestling? Sorry, Fire Pro Wrestling. You've got the Token. Is it not Token Road? Is that one? No, Retsuden. Yeah, Token Road's on the N64, isn't it?
Giant Gram ones as well.
Yeah, Giant Gram. I mean, all of those are superior to the WWE ones that we got kind of in the West.
It's a really odd game, Royal Rumble, isn't it? Because it's so light on features.
But it's an arcade port, isn't it?
It looks brilliant from the screenshots. I'll give them that much. I never played it personally, but it looks really good. They gave it 91%, so it was very, very highly recommended. I should have compared these scores to yours, Mike, and your magazine. 4.
I gave it a 4.
It's interesting this actually because I am speaking to Simon Phillips, who's the editor of Dreamcast magazine, or was the editor of Dreamcast magazine. He's up for doing an interview.
Excellent.
On the main site, and I've sent him some questions about life as the editor of a Dreamcast magazine back in the day. So hopefully that will be coming up soon, and maybe I can quiz him on some of these dodgy review scores.
Because they pitched for the official license as well, didn't they, back in the day?
I believe so, yeah,
which would have been an interesting story. The next review is of the amazing Power Stone 2, which was the original Power Stone was actually the first Dreamcast game that I ever played. But the sequel for me was, I still think it's probably in my top 10 Dreamcast games. I've had many, many enjoyable evenings doing multiplayer on this game. I'm amazed that series didn't continue, to be honest. I thought it was brilliant. Well,
there's quite a few new games on current gen and on PC that kind of take the baton and kind of run with it on that kind of formula of a big free for all. Got to be honest, I was never a big fan of Power Stone, mainly because I only ever played it in single player because I had no friends, and that still continues to this day. But yeah, I can see the appeal of multiplayer, especially in Power Stone 2, because it's 4-player, isn't it? 4-player simultaneous.
It was amazing.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
Really good game. Next up, we have the amazing Sydney Olympics 2000.
See, it's brilliant.
I've never actually played it. I've never played it because I've got it.
I have,
but it won't run. Go on, sorry, mate.
I have a soft spot for Olympic games, and I know Kev does as well. And Sydney 2000 is actually quite a good game. I had it on the PC back in the day, and it's a pretty good game. The Dreamcast version's odd because there are certain things that just like don't really make sense, like the stands that go back for infinity, so the stadiums look huge.
What?
It's actually quite a good game.
I've just noticed that one of the screenshots.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
So
bizarre.
what? The stands go back like forever.
Yeah, they don't go back forever, but when you're in the stadiums, or some of the stadiums, the actual stands just seem to go back and back and back, and so it's just like millions of people. And it's just like the diving as well. The diving's really weird, as the stands don't really work out properly.
That's really
it's actually it's actually genuinely quite a good game for Olympic Games as far as they go, because you've got all the training missions, training events, or you've got to train stuff up. So you've got to basically get your athlete up to a level to then go and compete in the Olympics. It's actually quite an interesting idea.
Any guesses on the score?
It gave it 60%, was it?
Close. Tom?
61.
65.
Ooh.
A quick aside on that. International Track and Field on the PlayStation is still one of the funniest games I've ever played in multiplayer, because whenever you do I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this when you've had mates over playing that game, but everyone does something different for their technique for the 100 meters. And one of my mates used to take one of his socks off and put his sock on his hand and like use his thumb. And it was just, the best thing is you'd all be there waiting for the gun to go off. And you'd be dying not to laugh at each other, but you're kind of getting on your marks kind of position. Some of the funniest game memories ever.
Olympic gold on the Mass System for me. That was the one which we did it on when I was at school. Everyone sort of had a different technique of having to press two buttons and how to actually do it. I remember the hurdles on that game, because obviously you've got to press the up button on the actual D-pad as well.
Yes.
And so everyone was sort of like, there was one kid in my class who just he couldn't get it right at all. And so whenever he went to press the hurdle, he'd stop pressing the buttons to run, and then would get really annoyed and throw the pad around. It was great.
I'm just looking at some pictures on Google of the crowds on Sydney Olympics. They are pretty monstrous stadiums, aren't they?
It's a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a bit weird.
The next game that was reviewed, and I'm not making this up, this is genuinely the next game that reviewed, is Spirit of Speed 1937.
Yes.
And the byline they've gone with is, ever wondered what sort of car your granddad used to drive? Then try this. It's the first ever senior citizen driving simulator.
Yeah.
And
there's an interesting thing. When I was playing Spirit of Speed, on the back of the game, it states realistic physics. And it's the best tagline in any game ever, because it's the biggest lie I've ever seen in any game. It's realistic physics.
I think I know the score for this. Was it like 37%? No, because it's 37. It Spirit of Speed 1937. No,
higher than that.
It's close.
Is it
45?
39?
39%, which seems remarkably high for me for a game that they said is less enjoyable than having your face stamped on by a large skinhead and then being pushed into a beehive full of angry bees. So, I think 39% is pretty reasonable.
It is. It's about average.
They only gave it 44% for visuals, and I think, if anything else, it at least looks pretty decent. I mean, think about the flags.
Well, yeah, there's
That's
that.
true.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, but that said, you've not actually seen it in action yet, have you? So
that's true. I may come back. Wait till next month for my breakdown.
I'm looking forward to this already. I'm looking forward to your synopsis, your opinion.
I actually remember seeing back in the day when this game was kind of previewed and stuff, Spirit of Speed, and it was actually one, again, being a motorsport fan all my life, it was one that really caught my eye, because it was quite rare that you had kind of the old fashioned style racing cars. I remember Monaco had the classic races in it as well. So I remember thinking this could be quite an interesting one, and obviously steered well clear following that.
The same kind of time it came out, though. I think Grand Prix Legends came out on a PC, didn't it? Which did it much, much better, sort of retro racing.
It can't really do much worse, to be fair, Mike.
That's true.
Next up, we have another game we've discussed on this very podcast, Super Magnetic Neo, which received... Oh, go on.
I was going to say, does it get something like 72 or something?
I think 75-ish.
85%.
Oh, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
I never played it again. Something that I seem to remember there being a demo of this, which I could be horribly wrong on, but I seem to remember there was a demo on Dream On, maybe.
I think you might be right.
Yeah.
And then we've got Walt Disney World Magical Quest or Magical Racing Tour. Yeah, that's the one.
I don't mind Magical Racing Tour. It's an interesting game. It's a good little kart racing game.
I just find it to be a very sloppy PS1 port.
Oh yeah, and the characters are awful. It's basically Disney, so they've gone right. Let's get a Disney license. Brilliant. Yeah. It's got thousands of characters. Yep. So which characters are we going to put in the game? Chip and Dale. Excellent. Jiminy Cricket. Right. And then we're going to make up the other 10. What?
They actually there's actually kind of like a centerpiece in this review around, and the title of it is "Who the Hell," and it actually talks around like who the hell is Tiara Damage, Bruno Biggs, Polly Roger. It's like, what the heck?
They're really odd. They're basically meant to be characters based on each of the different worlds at Walt Disney.
It looks very Diddy Kong Racing as well, like the style of the fonts and stuff.
Oh, it's not in the same. It's not in the same. Worthy of being in the same breath as Diddy Kong Racing.
It's a very, very like subpar sort of game, but it's good fun for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the tracks are interesting, and there's the normal Halloween level, which I always like, and the Pirates of the Caribbean level with the Pirates of the Caribbean music in the background, as in the ride, not from the film. That's really interesting.
Oh, so there's not a cartoonish like rendition of Johnny Depp?
Sadly not. No, my wife would be on the game constantly.
No, I've seen him recently. He looks knackered, doesn't he?
He does.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, back to the Dreamcast.
There is one more review. I was wrong. San Francisco Rush 2049, which was another huge favourite of mine.
I love this game. Absolutely love this game.
Yeah, I love Midway Racers. So a bit of a guilty confession that the Cruising USA and Cruising World were two of my favourite arcade games, and then subsequently N64 games when they came out. And there was just something about Midway racing games that I just loved in the mid to late 90s. So this was one.
It was so shit and so easy to pick up and play. I love them myself. I still play Cruising USA on my MacBook because I've got the ROM. Do you know what I mean? So
Cruising World was the one for me. Cruising World, I would put that in my top 5 N64 games any day because it was just, we played 4-player in that game.
I know exactly what you mean. It's great. Yeah. It's a great game.
So I remember getting again the demo of San Fran Rush on Dream On. There was a demo version on there, and I remember playing that to death. And I did end up getting this game for Christmas, but they only gave it 71%, which I thought was pretty.
I think they've robbed it there. To be honest, I do actually know for a fact that San Francisco Rush is also one of Bernie Stolar's favourite Dreamcast games. So there you go. You can have that one for free.
I'll take it. And we'll wrap up then with the charts. So the UK charts for the Dreamcast in August. Top of the chart is Tony Hawk's Pro Skateboarder.
Yep.
Resi Evil Code Veronica.
Yep.
Wacky Races, which I remember buying on launch from HMV of all places, just because it was I was desperate for a Mario Kart style game, and that had just come out, and I thought that was really good.
Yes, great.
Echo the Dolphin.
Yeah,
I've never played the Dreamcast version of that. That's on my to-do list, actually. I do quite fancy that one.
It's very hard.
Yeah, we do have some fans of that game. I know Scott, our Australian correspondent, is very fond of the Dreamcast version of that game.
Nice. Crazy Taxi, classic. MDK2, I think that's an underrated game. Yeah. It reviewed really well, but not many people have played that. I thought that was really, really good fun at the time.
It's really difficult, though. Very difficult.
Yeah.
V-Rally 2, you mentioned that earlier, Mike. Yeah. Sega Bass Fishing.
Classic.
Soul Reaver.
Great game.
Yep.
And finally Soul Calibur, which arguably the best game.
How many games have got Soul in the title for Dreamcast?
I know.
Soul Reaver, Soul Calibur, Soul Fighter.
There's an article. Stop using all the article.
Okay, I'll edit that out. Cool.
And that was the Dreamcast in August of 2000 rather, not 2018. 2018 is now.
18 years ago.
Yeah.
Crazy. Time flies.
It certainly does. Excellent. Okay then, guys. I think that brings us to a natural end point for this particular episode 61. Can you believe it's 61 episodes? mental. Yeah, so all it remains for me to say is thank you for joining me on this quite sunny Sunday afternoon. It's been a pleasure, as always. A lot covered there. Hopefully the listener, enjoyed us listening to us ramble as well. I think that's about it, really. Guys, where can you be found on the old social media, James?
Twitter at AgileHarvey.
Fantastic. And Mike, yourself?
At space_turnip.
Excellent. And also, as we said earlier, at the top of the podcast, you can find Mike's amazing book, The A to Z of Dreamcast Games. If you just head to our website, which is www.thedreamcastjunkyard.co.uk, on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a little yellow kind of advert for it. Just click on that and you'll find a download link. Download it. It will give you literally all you need to know about every single game ever released for the Dreamcast. That's the web address done. You can find us on Facebook at the Dreamcast Junkyard. If you just type that into Facebook, we've also got a big group. I think we're nearing 14,000 members now. Only about 3 of which will listen to this podcast. But hey ho, what can you do? You can also find us on Twitter as a collective at the DC Junkyard. I'm on Twitter as myself. I mainly just tweet about Triumph motorbikes. So if you don't like Triumphs, probably don't follow me. It's at Tom Lee C. And yeah, also we do have a YouTube channel as well. So if you go onto YouTube and type Dreamcast, you will find Dreamcast Guy. But just below Dreamcast Guy, you will find Dreamcast Junkyard. So yeah, please have a look at what we've got on there. And that, I think, will do it for this particular episode. We will be back in the future at some point. We don't like to put a date or a time or any kind of regularity on these things because, we've all got lives. I'm sure you have as well, listening to this. But yeah, when we do get together, it's always good fun. So thanks very much for listening. And yeah, if you'd like to leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to our podcast, that'd be much appreciated. Okay, guys, as we always do at the end of these infernal things, we all say goodbye. Goodbye.
Bye.
It's time to make some crazy money. Are you ready? Here we go.
Please stop this disc now.